Alright, this video is gonna be a little bit different. It's gonna be very toxic and very negative. But I think it might be a little bit entertaining. But nonetheless, if you don't like toxic, negative type of content, which is probably not too many of people because I think YouTube kind of runs off of a negativity bias. But anyways, I digress. If you don't like that kind of content, go ahead and click off on the video. I will definitely have something more normal, probably up in the next couple of days. This is kind of a one-off type of video. But we're going to move ahead and, well, let's talk about what it is. There was a lot of really dumb comments on the F-14 video that I uploaded a couple days ago now, maybe 4 or 5 days ago. And I'm not just talking about people that disagree with me. People can disagree with me all they want. There's plenty of people in the comments that had, differing opinions than I did, and I left them out of this video because, well, you can disagree and still not sound like an idiot. I'm talking about comments like this. Doesn't need a nerf. People just need to cope. This game is a sim. Sim means simulator, and simulator is made to be realistic. Cope. Simple, the F-14 is still missing a module also known as auto gun track. Now, of course, I tried to read that in a much more comprehensible way than how this particular individual has it typed out, just for your convenience, but yeah, reading it is just a little bit more stroke-inducing. Nonetheless, we'll talk about some of his points here. Number one, he does say cope a lot, so there's that. But two, sim? War Thunder? I don't know what he means exactly by that. I don't think War Thunder is a simulator at all. I don't think it tries to be a simulator at all. If you confuse War Thunder's gameplay for simulator, then I don't know what to tell you, man. The plane, like right now on screen, my plane's pulling 11 Gs. Not even the F-22 will do that. And I'm not quite sure what he means by auto gun track either. I'm just gonna assume maybe he's referring to the fact that modern fighters have that, like, that lead indicator, basically. I'm just assuming that's what he means, but it sounds like he's referring to something a lot more high-tech and advanced that I'm not quite sure the F-14 has. You're gonna notice in a lot of these comments, there's gonna be a lot of people justifying the F-14 being blatantly overpowered in a video game, and that's okay because it was apparently the best jet ever in real life. It's definitely the recurring theme of this video. Speaking of the F-14 being the best jet ever, there's this gem right here. There's air superiority fighter in the description of it, and there must be a reason for that superiority. What is superiority without superiority? Mind-blowing, right? F-14's strength has been proven. The aircraft that shot down 2 MiGs by just a single missile should not be nerfed. Now, as usual, I'm not going to speak anything on the F-14 in real life. I don't really give a shit, to be honest. I'm playing a video game. I want my video game to be fun and enjoyable. The F-14 shooting down 2 planes with 1 missile obviously means that this plane should just be insanely overpowered and better than everything else, completely ruin everybody else's gameplay experience that doesn't have it just because it blew up 2 MiGs with 1 Phoenix missile sometime in, I don't know, the 1980s or something. I don't know. I'm not following the logic there. There's a very large amount of people that cannot distinguish real life from video games, and they don't understand the point of War Thunder, and they don't know the difference between, a fun casual video game and something like DCS World that tries to be a full-on simulator. Speaking of which, here's another classic example. I don't think anything should be nerfed or buffed, just keep things as accurate as possible. Then Einstein over here chimes in with a quote from his favorite DCS YouTuber, Growling Sidewinder, who, by the way, I think is a fantastic YouTuber. I'm not trying to throw shade at him, but a DCS YouTuber's words don't really have much meaning in a game like War Thunder, and yet he tries to draw the comparison. Growling Sidewinder said it best: balance is a very heavy word. It's not meant to be fair. It's balanced in a way that both can win if they fight their own fight, which is absolutely true. Ironically, though, especially as he shows in his example right here, I'd say that's pretty much the very definition of balanced, and I'd say that's pretty fair. If they're fighting their own fight, they should absolutely be able to win if they're doing it well. The problem here is that the F-14 fights everybody's fight better than they do themselves, and that's why I'm kind of making the video calling out the F-14 for being blatant bullshit. There is absolutely nothing anything can do fighting its own fight to beat the Tomcat because it does everything better than everything. I'm not saying that the Tomcat has to be on equal playing field as the MLD. I understand it's a Gen 4. I understand a lot of people think it's better than the MLD, and that's totally fine. It's allowed to be better than the MLD in War Thunder as well, overall. Anyways, the Tomcat should not be better than everything at literally everything. If it just happens to be a better overall aircraft, then that's absolutely fine. There's always going to be the most meta aircraft at top tier. You're seeing it on the screen right now, the J-7E, which we're going to get to a little bit later. I don't think that the F-14, again, has to be on the same level as these Gen 3 planes. I just don't think that it should be so blatantly obvious that it is better than every other plane in the game at everything else. I hope that clarifies the point a little bit there. Now this one isn't quite so dumb. I'm not going to actually say it's dumb at all. It's a good point. The problem is there is a gaping hole in this logic here, and we're looking at who is going to tell them that this is the first 4th gen fighter in the game and that they will add more 4th gen later. Very true and very valid. If you're not going to be making the plane more balanced, then they should at least be adding it with equal competition to go with it. Other 4th gen fighters, as he says in his comment. The problem is they will add them later, which is fine, and he's right, but that does not change the fact that right now the game is going to be extremely unbalanced and very annoying to play. There's not a doubt in my mind that a couple updates into the future, the F-14 is probably not going to be the best jet in the game anymore, and that's absolutely fine by me. I don't really care. The point is that right now it is going to be the best jet in the game by an absolutely massive margin. And this is usually about the time when people would be making very cringe nationalist pissing contest comments about how overpowered the MLD is and why that should mean the F-14 should be broken as well. So let's get into some of those. You could say the exact same thing, but all existing US fighters until now are the MiG-23 in this fight, and the F-14 is the MLD until now, XD. Now the two things about this comment is the fact that he says all existing US fighters until now are the MiG-23, and the fact that he's constantly comparing things to the MLD just like everybody else. Now I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the MLD is not one of the best aircraft in the game. It's definitely one of the most meta top tiers in the game. I don't think there's any questioning that. But the idea that the MiG-23 MLD does literally everything better than every aircraft in the game, like the Tomcat does, is absolute nonsense. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now, the J-7E, in my opinion, is just absolutely the most meta top tier in the game. The PL-5s are better than all of the MiG-23 MLD's loadout, radar missiles don't really mean shit, and the flight performance of the J-7E is significantly more versatile, in my opinion, than that of the MLD, and of a plane that's going to beat the MLD in the dogfight, the J-7E does have an extremely high probability of doing so, and it's ultimately going to come down to the pilot. Right there is one aircraft that I think is just straight up better than the MLD, not even talking about something that gives it a run for its money, but better than the MLD. Moving on from that, in the US tree specifically, like he says, no US fighter apparently can hold a candle to the MLD. I beg to differ, because the F-5E is an extremely damn good plane, in a dogfight mainly, and if you have two good pilots, it's inevitably going to become a dogfight. So we'll just say that the F-5 and the MLD are battling it out. The MLD technically will probably have the advantage in the end, but it's not something so disproportionately overpowered on the MLD's end to where the F5 doesn't have a chance. Again, it's going to largely get to come down to the pilot in that scenario. The F5 is a very capable dogfighter. It can give the MLD a run for its money, and that's plain in the US tree right there. Moving on from that even, we're going to go ahead and look at the MiG-23 MLA. That's another plane in the German tech tree, not the Russian tech tree where the MLD is, and granted, they are very, very similar planes. You could argue that they're basically the same plane. It doesn't matter because it's at least in a different tech tree and gives more people more chances to compete with quote-unquote the most overpowered plane in the game, which is what people claim the MLD is. The point here is that I have just told you 3 planes off the top of my head that could easily beat the MLD in a dogfight given certain circumstances or pilot skill. The J7 being straight up better in my opinion, and 2 others that can at least give the MLD a run for its money, or arguably the MLA is better. The Tomcat, on the other hand, has none of that. There is not a single plane in the game that'll give the Tomcat a run for its money, except for the J7E when they are on low fuel. That's the only plane. The MLD can't do shit to a Tomcat. No other plane can do shit to a Tomcat. Only the J7 with low fuel can do shit to a Tomcat, whereas the MLD has all of these other competitors that could actually maybe beat it in a fight, and some that have very, very too high chances of beating it in a fight. So why the Tomcat keeps getting compared to the MLD other than just malding American mains that were mad that I called it overpowered, I have no idea, because it is nowhere near as bad of a situation as the MiG-23 MLD is. Now, I said nowhere near as bad, and I meant that in a negative way. Not that the Tomcat is a better situation, it is a significantly worse situation than what we have with the MLD. In fact, I'd even say that the MLD on release wasn't definitively quite the best jet in the game yet, because SAR missiles were still very, very, very strong. Radars were a lot better than they are now. Planes like the EJ Kai and the Viggen were arguably more meta, despite not having the flight performance, just because of the kit that they rocked. And it wasn't until SARs and radars got nerfed to where I could say, yeah, it is pretty indisputable that the MiG-23 MLD, or even MLA now, is definitely one of, if not the best top tier in the game. Now, this one, not quite so dumb, it's mostly just his opinion, so we're only going to read the first line here. Honestly, a lot of salt from MLD pilots who are angered they can't dominate anymore, and it's kind of funny. You get good win rates and perform well, and there will always be that next machine added to power creep, clap, or both. The rest of it is just pretty much him saying that he'd rather have shiny new vehicles than game balance, which personally I do think is kind of dumb, but I mean, if that's what he prefers, then whatever. At least he's not giving some stupid reason as to why, like, I don't know, realism or the missile blew up 2 MiGs at once. I don't know, but what I do want to address here is just the mindset. Honestly, a lot of salt from MLD players. It's like, as soon as you call out something from, you know, being too overpowered, automatically that must mean you're a salty MLD player. I don't hate the Tomcat, I don't love the MLD, I just want my game to be fun and balanced. It's Air RB in War Thunder. This is not a simulator, it's not supposed to be super realistic, it's just supposed to be fun. And the second thing is him talking about the MLD win rates. They're really not that high. I think it's something like I don't know, 61% or something like that, whereas the US is at 59% win rate. And ironically enough, the J7E with the West Taiwan tech tree being at 78% win rate. Almost like me saying the J7E is the most meta top tier in the game, has a little bit of validity behind it. Ever since that PL5 buff happened, I think it's pretty indisputable at this point, and the win rates kind of demonstrate that, but I digress. We'll talk about that a little bit later, maybe in another video. Here's just more Tomcat fanboys claiming that if the MLD quote-unquote stomps at top tier, stomps every other plane at that, then the Tomcat deserves to as well, as if maybe there's only 2 tech trees in the entire game, Russian and American, and not every other nation in the game that has to deal with this bullshit as well. And as we've already discussed earlier in the video, the MLD is not nearly as blatantly overpowered as the Tomcat is. It actually does have some viable competition somewhere in the game, you just have to find it, whereas the Tomcat, there's literally nothing that anything can do to beat the Tomcat. Now, a quick final thoughts and summary here before I throw up our 2 honorable mentions. 2 honorable mention comments that I just thought were really funny that I want to share with you guys. Number 1, I don't want the F-14 to be equal. It doesn't necessarily have to be equal with the MLD. It doesn't necessarily have to be equal with anything. That's not what I mean when I say it needs to be nerfed. When I say it needs to be nerfed, it needs to not be blatantly, obviously better than everything else in the game at literally everything. That's what I want to change. The F-14's allowed to be the best top tier in the game. I don't care. There's always going to be a best top tier in the game. Like I said, right now it's the J7. I think that's quite supported with the 78% win rate. I just don't want the Tomcat to be nearly as good as it is. I think you can absolutely nerf the Tomcat without making it suck, or without making it not better than the MLA or MLD. If they're not going to do that, then they should at least have a couple of other Gen 4s that other nations can get access to have valid competition against it. But we all know that's not going to happen. They said it's not going to happen, and that's why I'm calling for a nerf to the F-14. I don't want the game to be so insufferably unbalanced for now, because now is now and later is later. There will be more Gen 4s added later, but I'm not playing the game later, am I? I'm playing it right now. I think the comparison, the constant comparison of the Tomcat to the MLD is ridiculous. I think that the Tomcat is significantly more broken than the MLD. As I've said, there's other planes that can compete with the MLD. They might not necessarily be better, but they can at least give it competition, whereas that's not the case in any way with the F-14. I think the people that are justifying the F-14 being so blatantly broken for the sake of it's the best jet ever made in real life, lol. It was better than the MiG-23, lol. It shot down 2 MiGs with 1 Phoenix, lol. I think that's just insanely stupid. I'm playing a video game, an arcade flight game at that. It's not even something like DCS where, you know, it's supposed to be full-on simulation. If you want something like that, then yeah, go play DCS. This is War Thunder. That's not what it tries to be. That's not what it's ever going to be. And I don't think the majority of people want it to be that way. Moving the F-14's battle rating up, which is what a lot of people suggested. Keep it the same way as it is, but move the battle rating up. I can see the sentiment there, but in reality it's not going to change anything other than save the 10.0s, or I guess 10.3s rather. But everybody knows the 10.3s aren't going to do shit in a full up tier anyways, so you're saving them a little bit, but not a lot. And the F-14 going up to, what would it be at max, 12.3, because there has to be something it can actually play against, so at the most it can be 12.3. Well, it doesn't matter because it's still superior to every 11.3 in just about every single category, if not every single category. So again, I get the sentiment there. It's nice to the 10.3 planes, but in the end of the day, I don't think that's going to change how top tier plays in any way, other than the couple of 10.3, 10.7 players aren't going to have to deal with it. Now, for the 2 dumbest comments of this entire video, we have a special feature of the vegan cult here. Now, if this is your comment on screen, I hope you take it as a lighthearted joke. I think it's a pretty dumb comment, obviously, but I don't think you're necessarily a stupid person. I get that you like your vegan. I get that you've had experiences where you beat a lot of planes in the vegan, but nonetheless, I'm gonna laugh at it anyways. And here we have it, the glorious vegan cult. I don't know what it is about the JA-37 players, but they swear by the fact that they have the best jet in the game, and I bet you when the F-22 ever makes it to War Thunder, they will say that the vegan is the F-22 is no match for the vegan. I don't know why. I don't know what the deal is with this JA-37. I get that it's a pretty damn good plane, but it's not that good. And it gets even funnier. Here we have the JA-37 is going to be a good opponent for the Tomcat in a rate fight. I don't know what the hell he was smoking when he typed that out, but it gave me a good laugh. We did have a little bit of banter in the replies, I'm pretty sure. I'm sure he's a nice guy. I don't mean to be dogging on you too much. It's just, no, the vegan stands absolutely no chance in a raid fight against the Tomcat. It already can't beat the MLD, and the F-14 runs circles around the MLD in a raid fight. So I just thought those 2 comments were pretty funny, and I wanted to share them. I guess I'll take the last bit of the time on this video to talk about the meta of top tier, the current meta, and how I think the current planes are going to fit in with the introduction of the Tomcat. And starting off, I just want to say that I think that the Tomcat is obviously blatantly overpowered. Do I think it's going to be constantly raffle stomping every plane in the game though? In practice, no, I don't. And that's simply just because top tier is top tier. Like I said, if the F-22 was in the game, I bet you there is a vegan player out there that would slam it and then type on the Reddit forums, whatever it may be, that the vegan is so much better than the Tomcat because of his anecdotal experience. And that happens in top tier all the time. Inferior planes kill blatantly superior aircraft, and it's just how the game plays. That doesn't necessarily mean that the blatantly superior aircraft is okay though, just because it dies sometimes, because things die in top tier. That's just how missile combat works. I don't think that's an excuse though for something to be nearly as good as the Tomcat is. That being said though, I do want to give a little bit of credit where credit's due to the other aircraft. The MLD is not going to be absolutely garbage when the F-14 comes out. Is it going to be technically inferior in every single way? Absolutely. Are you going to be, able to get kills with it even when the Tomcat comes out? Absolutely. Like I said, you're still going to be getting kills in the inferior aircraft. The J-7E especially with the PL5s and still pretty good flight performance, not quite on the level of the F-14, but it is still pretty damn good. The main thing is those PL5s. These missiles are the most meta weapons you can possibly have in top tier. They have a very, very long range for a quote-unquote short-range Fox 2 missile, and they have an extremely fast motor that, accelerates them super quickly. That's why they get such extended range, but that motor also burns out insanely quickly. Combine that with the fact that its seeker is pretty damn good. The seeker head itself is a pretty narrow seeker, I believe, which helps it be a little more flare resistant to planes that keep their afterburner on. Obviously, if they have their afterburner off and they flare, it's going to get flared anyways. But combine that again with the fact that the overall field of view is very wide. You have an extremely large gimbal for that seeker to give it lead, and of course it doesn't have a maximum G overload during launch, so you could be pulling as hard as you want and giving that missile all of that lead and then launch it off the rails, on top of the fact it got buffed to 30 Gs recently. Now also in the dev server, the radar gun sight of the J7 slays the PL5, so it's basically a constant ACM slaving to the PL5, which sometimes gives the PL5 near all aspect capability in closer range fights, and combine that with the extremely wide field of view that you can give it lead with, and you can actually hit some pretty nice quote-unquote all aspect shots in dogfights. The main thing though is that quick burn time with the very long range. You will be able to slip that missile in on targets that just don't see you, and if they do see you, well, they don't see that the missile marker anymore because the motor's not burning. So the J7 is going to be the best competition. It's still going to be very meta. It's probably not going to be as good as the Tomcat, but we'll just have to wait and see. Overall, the Tomcat is going to be the best plane in the game. There's gonna be ways to play the other planes though still. So hope you enjoyed the negative video, and I hope you'll see you in the next one. See ya.